Okay, so this week we received far more news about Payday 3 and the future of the Payday franchise as a whole than I ever would have expected. We got a small but meaningful update on the status of the live-action Payday adaptation. We've now had the official confirmation of a Skills 2.0 update being in the works, putting to bed any uncertainty sparked up by Almir's reluctance to confirm that this was something that the team were working on during some of his recent livestreams. Further to that, we've started to hear little nuggets about what the team are focusing on for the next heist, as well as being shown a new breakdown of how the Payday franchise is going to be managed going forward. But above all else, I think the most surprising thing that we've heard this week is that Starbreeze are not only entertaining the idea of updating Payday 2 again, in fact, they already have a quote-unquote small content update ready for Payday 2 which they're planning on releasing within the next weeks or months. And by the sounds of it, this isn't the only update Payday 2 is going to be getting. As you can see, we have a lot to talk about today, and as always, each section of this video will be timestamped. To begin with, two things that I didn't even mention at the start of this video are the Overkill Delivery Drone and the Justicar Revolver, both releasing alongside the Party Powder Heist and Armor 2.0 on May 26th. The Overkill Delivery Drone is a quite straightforward buff to all Overkill weapons. This Overkill Delivery Drone allows any Overkill weapon you decide to use to be delivered directly to you regardless of where you are on the heist. This highly requested feature is finally making its way into the game with Update 14, and while there's still a lot of things that I want to experiment with and test before I pass any final judgment, I think it has been implemented very well. I haven't really noticed the drone getting stuck on the environment all that much or having any pathing issues, and it seems to make its way to you quite soon after you call in for your overkill weapon. Although this free addition isn't necessarily what's going to make you want to jump back into Payday 3 on the 26th, more likely to do that is the Justicar Revolver, although you're much more likely to recognize this pocket shotgun as the Judge from Payday 2. I'm hesitant to go into all of the juicy details about this weapon too much just yet and save that for my complete Update 14 overview, though I will say that this weapon does feel like a very faithful remake of the beloved stealthing sidearm from the previous game. Alongside both of these additions, Update 14 brings with it Armor 2.0 and some noticeable difficulty tweaks that ended up being the roundabout nerf to ammo funnel and replenish that we needed all along. But again, all of that to come in my Update 14 video. Something else that we have needed and requested since the very early days of Payday 3 is a complete overhaul for the skill system. While this has been on the roadmap for a little while, whether or not it was actually in development has been called into question a couple of times, as Almir has stated that there are no current plans for a skills overhaul on stream a couple of times.
I can say there are currently no confirmed plans to do a massive skill overhaul. We would need to get back to you on that topic.
After he said this, the community kind of ended up in two minds. Some people thought that the roadmap had been updated incorrectly, or that a skills rework was planned at some point but has since been cancelled. And the other side of the community simply thought that Almir was just trying to prevent himself from confirming something that he hadn't realised had already been confirmed. Well, regardless of which camp you might have fallen into, this week Andreas confirmed beyond any doubt that Skills 2.0 is not only in the works, but coming along quite nicely.
There's a lot of other different things we're working on. There's something I want to say, but I'm not really supposed to, but I'm probably gonna say it anyway.
Ooh.
You guys have been asking about skills. There's a lot of feedback around the skills system. We have talked about doing a skills revamp, and we're actually doing it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Skills 2.0 is a thing, it's progressing very well.
He was obviously hesitant to confirm a release date, which is understandable as we have no point of reference for just how far into development this system is, but he did share some additional information with us. He explained that the new system is going to be leaning more into archetypes, taking the focus off of the upkeep of certain things. No prizes for guessing what he was talking about there. It's far too early to even begin to speculate about what exactly this new skill system is actually going to look like in-game, but hopefully we'll be finding out more about this in the near future. Andreas also spoke about the Next Heist very briefly, sharing that something that the team are focusing on is fleshing out the pre-planning asset system a little bit more. He didn't give a specific example, but he mentioned that pre-planning assets as they are in-game right now feel a little weak, and choosing which one you want to use doesn't really feel like a decision that you need to think about all too much. He explained that certain pre-planning assets for the next heist might offer players an opportunity to secure more loot, or that they could come with particular benefits that are offset by certain risks that they introduce to the heist as well. I'd be very interested to see the pre-planning system get a little bit more fleshed out, and while I wouldn't expect a complete pre-planning overhaul anytime soon, switching up the assets so that they have a slightly more impactful effect on the heist is a really good place to start. A hot topic in the community over the last few months has been difficulty, and although I do think Update 14 brings some much needed difficulty rebalance to the game, it is a far cry from a completely new difficulty. Andreas also touched on the idea of a new difficulty, but explained that he thinks there's only really room for a new difficulty when players have a reason to come back and play the game. Personally, I think now is as good a time as any to introduce a new difficulty and step up the challenge, especially because most of the people still playing Payday 3 are likely players who have been around for quite a while and have an understanding of how the game's mechanics work, and therefore are able to trivialize the higher difficulties. That said though, I agree that the focus shouldn't be on making the game harder right now, but instead giving us more of a reason to come back and play. Whether that be through the implementation of something like the hardcore challenges system that we're still waiting on, or perhaps the addition of an infamy system. As much as I'd like to see the game get harder, I think it needs to get more replayable first. I've got to say, this week's Payday 3 news stream was actually really insightful. If you're at all interested in keeping up to date with Payday 3, I recommend giving it a watch. Before we talk about some of the bigger bombshells we received over the last week, if you are enjoying this video at all I ask is that you consider subscribing. We've got the goal of trying to reach 5,000 subscribers before Payday 3's next update releases in just 8 days. And if we manage to reach that goal, I'll be going back to play and review all of the Payday 2 heists that I never got the opportunity to experience as a console player, as they released exclusively on the PC version of the game. Regardless of whether or not we reach 5,000 subscribers in the next week, whenever we do reach that goal, I've got some Payday 3 Year 1 edition codes to give away at that milestone. Payday 3's next update is right around the corner, though believe it or not, and I genuinely can't believe I'm about to say this, but Payday 2's next update is seemingly also not that far away. Now, I know that feels like an absolutely wild thing to be saying in 2025, but during the Q&A at the end of Starbreeze's Q1 investor report for this year, now that Starbreeze own the full publishing rights for the Payday IP once again, somebody decided to ask whether or not this means we can expect any more Payday 2 updates in the future, and this was the response they got from the new CEO, Adolf Christiansen.
Yes, we have at least one small content update ready for Payday 2, which we will release over the next weeks or months. But this needs to be a very clear plan for both Payday 2 and Payday 3. Both franchises or both iterations of the franchise are very important to us, very close to our heart. So we'll make sure that we have a great pipeline in place for Payday 3 and keep Payday 2 well and alive with updates going forward.
Yes, there really is an update coming to Payday 2. I'm assuming that this update isn't just going to be another update that removes licensed content from the game, though we can never be too sure. I also wanted to point out the use of the word content. While I'm of course hesitant to suggest that Payday 2 really might be getting more content even after Payday 3's launch, I feel like if the use of the word content here was simply a mistake on behalf of the new CEO, some form of clarification or rectifying statement would have been issued by Starbreeze to get ahead of the rumor mill. To further support this bizarre idea that Payday 2 support might begin to pick up again, the CEO quite clearly states that there needs to be a clear plan for both Payday 2 and Payday 3, as both installments in the franchise are very important to the company. He explains that they are going to make sure that there's a great pipeline in place for Payday 3, and they're also going to keep Payday 2 well and alive with updates going forward. That is pretty much a direct quote from Adolf Christensen. I'm not sure what we can make of all of this just yet. Who knows what Starbreeze actually have in mind for Payday 2 going forward, but regardless, I'm going to be paying very close attention to what happens next. They also mention that because they now have the full publishing rights to the Payday IP, conversations about a live-action Payday adaptation can start to begin with a little bit more haste. There seems to be a long list of interested parties, which actually doesn't surprise me at all, so hopefully that project can start moving along swiftly. I don't think we can expect to see a mainstream live-action Payday adaptation for at least the next 3 to 4 years, but again, it's good to see the cogs start turning. All of this seems to be in keeping with Starbreeze's new approach to the Payday IP, with it now being broken down into 4 separate categories. Payday Legendary, which encompasses all of the games released before Payday 3, so Payday the Heist, Payday 2, and Payday 2 Crime Wave Edition. Payday Core, consisting of Payday 3 and any future first-party Payday titles developed by Starbreeze. Payday Partnerships, which will include appearances of the Payday IP in other games like the officially licensed relaunch of Notoriety and the currently in development PUBG collaboration with Krafton. Finally, there is Payday Lore and Licensing. I think this is more of a blanket category to include any use of the Payday IP outside of gaming. Adolf Christensen explained that this final pillar of the Payday franchise is going to be used to bring the rich backstories of the iconic Payday characters to life, exploring their personal struggles and reasons for turning to a life of crime to begin with. I really wouldn't be surprised if some of the concepts that end up coming out because of this lore and licensing category stem from some of the Payday Origins concepts that Almir shared with us recently. That was supposed to be a narrative-driven Payday game in the style of the Telltale games. While that was cancelled many moons ago, I'm sure some of the narrative concepts are things the devs have been holding onto. Considering this is the first official communication we've had from the new CEO, I'm quite impressed. Of course, actions speak louder than words, and I want to see certain things before I pass any judgment. For example, one of the things he mentioned was an increased update cadence for Payday 3, stating that by the company regaining the rights to the franchise, it allows them to create and release content faster for the community. That sounds fantastic on paper, but it's only really important if we actually start to see it happen. So Starbreeze, once again, the ball is in your court. For an insight into how big of a deal the partnership with Plyon ending for Starbreeze actually is on a financial level, Matt Yule, now having returned to his role as the company's CFO, explained that the deal between Plyon and Starbreeze entitled each party to 50% of the game's net revenue. So Starbreeze would get half and so would Plyon. Why is this important? Well, we also need to remember that Starbreeze owes 33% of Payday 3's profit to Digital Brothers until the sum of $40 million has been paid to them. So that's the money that the game makes once the cost of making and supporting it has been completely recouped by Starbreeze. 33% of what they make after that goes to Digital Bros until $40 million has been paid. This information was brought to light rather prominently about 6 months ago, and quite rightly sparked a lot of concern within the community. Matt explained that although Payday 3 never actually reached a place of profitability while partnered with Plyon, if the game would have, that 33% would obviously have been taken solely out of Starbreeze's 50%, which after doing some simple maths means that if Payday 3 was to become profitable during Starbreeze's partnership with Plyon, Plyon would be taking 50% of that profit, Digital Brothers would be taking 16.5%, and Starbreeze would be left with only 33.5% of the game's total profit. With the now rearranged agreement, as I understand it from what Matt's explained, it's now as straightforward as Starbreeze taking home 67% of any profit the game makes, and Digital Brothers taking 33%. If I've understood what Matt's explained correctly, now that Plyon have stepped away from the partnership agreement, Starbreeze are in a position where they will be making double what they would have been making by investing into Payday 3 and getting the game to a position where it's turning over a profit, while partnered with Plaion. Sure, they will of course have to pay Digital Brothers to begin with, but with a franchise with as much potential as the Payday franchise, paying off that $40 million over the span of the next couple of years is certainly possible, especially with the motivating factor of once that $40 million is paid off, 100% of the net profit will be going to Starbreeze. I don't know if this good of a deal is something that the higher-ups at Starbreeze expected to get out of Plaion backing out, but if it was, perhaps certain things over the last 18 months were handled the way they were in an attempt to make stepping away from the franchise more desirable for Plaion. That is obviously heavy speculation and likely not even remotely close to the truth, but it has got me wondering. Regardless, whatever way you choose to look at it, Payday 3 has just become a significantly more profitable game for Starbreeze to maintain, and as such, hopefully we will start to see them take more of an interest in supporting the game going forward. I mean, it's a good sign that soon after Plaion stepping away from the game, we already have a new update on the horizon, another heist that we know is in active development, a skills overhaul that we've heard is shaping up quite nicely, and hopefully more things we'll hear about sooner rather than later in the works as well. All in all, this week has been a very news-heavy week for Payday 3. Payday is changing. Whether it be the amount of investment we're likely to see into the game as it's more profitable for Starbreeze, or the fact that we've broken out of those weeks and weeks of painful silence, the fact that Starbreeze and Plaion have agreed to a deal and gone their separate ways, leaving Starbreeze with complete ownership over the Payday IP, to the fact that Starbreeze are even internally now looking at the IP through a completely different structure. Whatever way you look at it, Payday is changing. And while I usually say only time will tell whether or not this is a change for the good or the bad, I'm actually going to take the optimistic approach here and say everything we've discussed so far in this video sends me really positive signals for the future of the franchise. The last thing we haven't discussed in this video but was part of this week's Payday news cycle is that earlier in the week the Starbreeze partners were allowed to share their thoughts on the upcoming Party Powder heist. And while I'm not sure that the new heist is going to be everybody's cup of tea, it certainly isn't mine, the rest of Update 14 is really strong, and I'm hoping that I'll warm up to the heist over time. We'll be taking a deep dive into everything that Update 14 has to offer in just over a week's time when it releases on the 26th. But for now, if you're interested in my thoughts on the Party Powder heist, you can click the video on screen now, and I'll see you in the next video.